Hello and welcome back to Loftsidebantr. This is your host, Andrew Damitopoulos, and on today's show, we are going to look into the NCAA tournament. We're going to go over some of the big stories that came up, including the selection show. We're going to look at some of the statistics to help pick your bracket, and then give you the list of teams that we feel can win the national championship. We're going to be talking with Dan O'Keefe, who's the owner of Inspirational Hoops, and he's going to go over kind of what his role is in that company, what Inspirational Hoops is, and what they're going to do for the community, all through basketball. Very exciting. We'll talk through a few other basketball items, but again, basketball heavy. This is March, NCAA March Madness. We're ready for it. Hello and welcome to Loftsidebantr. This is your host, Andrew Damitopoulos, and joining me today, and I didn't mention this before we hit record, but I'm going to say it now anyway. This is the second time that Dan O'Keefe is joining me for this podcast. He and I had a great show lined up just before the NCAA Tournament Selection Sunday. It was fantastic, and then I didn't hit save. So...
No excuses, no crazy explanation. You're just going to be honest?
I'm just going to be honest. Like, I could have sworn I hit save. I could have sworn... I got up from my chair after this. I'm like, that was really good. It was really natural as everything else. I went down to eat dinner, and then I came up the next day to edit everything together, and it was gone. Everything was gone.
I would have... Unbelievable, brother. I would have said solar flare, lightning storm, power out. Not my fault.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's the growing pains that go through all this. But for those of you who weren't standing here in the loft with me while we recorded this, Dan O'Keefe is the owner of Inspirational Hoops. And so first and foremost, as I've kind of introduced you on this, what is Inspirational Hoops?
Inspirational Hoops is a 501c3. It's a nonprofit group that I started many years ago, back when I played basketball. I don't really play anymore, but I guess you could compare it to the Harlem Globetrotters. But instead of making people laugh, making kids laugh, we try to instill, superhuman confidence in themselves, positive choice making, mindsets, all that good stuff. So it's a little bit more serious and a little bit more competitive. We don't really do the crazy skits, but we got some really good slam dunkers. We got a lot of people who can do like all those crazy tricks. Dribbling skills, ball handling skills. We traditionally play against, that city's best talent or even, a school's group of teachers, administrators. But it's just been, it went from a business that I really tried to launch to just a personal project that I find really rewarding. I love kids, love working with kids, and basketball has been my entire life. So I found a way to combine them, and it's always a fun time when we get together.
So where are some of the places that you've played with Inspirational Hoops?
Well, our home base, I guess you would call it, would be Massachusetts. So North Shore in particular, Lawrence, Haverhill, Methuen. We visit those schools almost every year. But we have done some pretty crazy stuff overseas. We've done a couple shows in the Bahamas. We did a show in Mexico. I've done stuff in LA before, but honestly, it's way more fun for me when I can do it close to home. So New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, that type of stuff. I try to keep it close.
Now, do you have anything coming up with Inspirational Hoops?
It's tough, brother, because I haven't done a full-fledged tour, I think, since 2018. But I always try to do at least one event every spring. We have one coming up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's going to be in July. It's a 2-day event, and it's a youth camp. But we're going to bring some, like I said, some of those slam dunkers and some of those guys who do the tricks. Put on a show for the kids, teach them some hoop skills, and then kind of talk about, mindset and positive choices. So just one lined up this year, but as long as I keep, minimum one on my calendar, I'm a happy guy.
Perfect. Nice. Now, I'm going to break this news to you here on the pod as well. I can no longer be your go-to dunker. Yeah.
I need you.
Yeah, I know. I think the last time I dunked a basketball, I fell and broke my elbow. So.
Well, I know you've torn both of your meniscuses, plus whatever ACL, MCL you got lurking back there. I know you tore those too, but for those listeners who don't realize, Andrew used to be a hooper. I mean, you used to play, man. You used to be really good. You played bigger than you were. You were like a shooting guard who had post moves. You had strength. You could get down low. We grew up playing together, so I remember this stuff. And
Yeah,
too bad none of it's on video. But you were nice, man. You were good.
I've gone out and consciously destroyed all the videos. But no, I remember you basically created this in your driveway in New Hampshire. So I mean, I can remember that, and I'll tell you one of the things when we were at Phillips Exeter Academy. I remember this. You were one of the people that told me I was one of the smartest players you ever played with, and that meant more to me than anything else because I was never the highest jumper. I was never the quickest guy. I'm pretty sure if I went above a certain mile per hour on my legs, my knees would literally explode. So,
I firmly believe in life rather than trying to be a little bit good at everything. You should find one thing you're really good at and lean all the way into it. For me, it was ball handling. Couldn't do much else, and for you, it was just IQ. I mean, I still, podcast is great. I can't wait to see what you do with it. But I hope you haven't ruled out coaching because, you have the mind for it for sure.
I've been trying to get my cats to play basketball. It has not gone well. So,
hey, put the videos up though, even if they're failing. They'll go viral. Then you can promote the podcast.
Well, as much as again, you took Inspirational Hoops to places, and again, I was even a person that thought that it wasn't going to go very many places because it was just kind of where we grew up and stuff like that. It wasn't the greatest market, but you've done so much more with it that I could ever possibly mention. So I have to give you all the credit in the world, man.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks. It's still, I feel bad that I didn't take it as far as I wanted to, but at least I didn't quit. And so, like I said, 1 event a year, 2 events a year, make some kids smile and feel good about themselves. I'm happy. So thanks for that, brother.
Yeah. So also in the previous episode that we had recorded, we talked about NCAA expansion, and you and I were very much against it. And I did touch on it on a different podcast that I had to record in a panic that I didn't have the one that you and I recorded. I touched on why it was ridiculous to expand it any further. You also said it was a watered-down product to keep going further than that. Unfortunately, the NCAA Selection Committee did not listen to that episode of this podcast because they've given everybody every reason to want expansion in the NCAA tournament. North Carolina did get selected to go to the NCAA tournament, and I'm a person that believes everything's above board and everybody that's saying something is telling the truth. However, Bubba Cunningham, who is the athletic director for North Carolina, the University of North Carolina, I should say, said he excluded himself from the conversations of including North Carolina in the NCAA tournament. I'd love to believe him. I've never met Bubba Cunningham. His name is Bubba. I'm sure we'd be best friends. But something's not right about that. Something's not right. Like, you can say all the time, oh, I think we deserve to get in. We deserve to get in. Hey, I'm going to step out. And then when you step out and they put North Carolina in, you're like, hey, are we good? Like, that just it just seems really fishy. The team that really lost out on this was West Virginia. And I'm going to tell you a couple of statistics, and you tell me if I'm crazy in thinking that there is something a little bit deeper here. North Carolina got in having gone 1-12 against quad 1 opponents, and what that means is teams that essentially made the tournament. They were 2-10 overall. Say that again.
Were they like a couple games over 500, right? I mean, what was their record?
22 they were 22-13 in a down year from in the ACC. Now, Duke, Louisville, Clemson are the other 3 teams that made it from the ACC. Wake Forest finished above North Carolina and didn't get in. So that's weird as well.
Mm-hmm.
The other team, like I said, West Virginia, that didn't get in, not only had a better record against NCAA tournament opponents, they went into Kansas and beat them without their best player. Now, they said that Tucker DeVries, which, by the way, I believe his name is Dana DeVries, was the head coach of West Virginia. West Virginia is now the head coach at Indiana. just got hired today,
Okay.
was out, and that's why the committee said, "Oh, West Virginia can't get in; their best player's hurt." But Indiana didn't get in at 19 and 13. West Virginia didn't get in for 19 and 13. North Carolina beat 2 teams in the tournament, lost all the rest of them. So the Dukes, all the Duke games, everything else like that, they lost. They beat UCLA, which UCLA is a 7 seed and gave away the game. And then they beat the play-in 16 seed American. Those are the only 2 teams they beat in the tournament this year. They lost everything. I can't imagine why they deserve to get in. I can't. But now,
that's. I was trying to play devil's advocate, and I didn't watch a ton of college hoops this year. I plan to now for the tournament, but playing devil's advocate. What are the reasons why they were selected? Take Bubba out of the equation.
Well, Bubba also gets a $100,000 bonus if their team makes the NCAA tournament. Just thought I'd throw that fact out there for you as well. Okay. So out of the 2 teams,
you moved me right down the rabbit hole, brother.
Yeah, exactly. North Carolina finished 33rd in the KenPom standings. So, again, for our listeners that don't know what KenPom is, it measures your offensive and defensive efficiencies over 100 possessions, which sounds very convoluted. I understand. But it's basically saying whether you're good with the ball in those 100 possessions or you're bad, whatever. They were 22nd in offensive efficiency, 53rd in defensive. West Virginia was at 53rd. So both teams are firmly within the 68 teams that they look at and they go, oh, they need to be in the tournament. West Virginia's offense was 131, where their defense was 15th overall in those efficiencies. Now, to the argument that we had in the lost, forgotten episodes of Loftsidebantr, just win. You got to win. You got to win these games. You got to prove to people and don't leave it up to a committee. If you want to get into the NCAA tournament and you're on the bubble, you just have to win. That's it.
Right.
So,
100%. Do you see UNC moving and shaking in this tournament? I mean, they obviously haven't shown us much this year against top teams. Where do you see them landing?
Well, they're in the first 4. So tomorrow they play San Diego State in one of the play-in games, and if they win, they go into the West bracket and they'll play Ole Miss. I think they're going to beat San Diego State. They're going to do the one thing I don't want to see is the run by them, because then everyone's going, well, see, they deserve to get in, and you know what? Maybe they get hot at the right time, and again, that's always a possibility. It's just you're taking teams that have shown you no chance of beating like tournament teams, anybody in the tournament, and putting them in and going, they deserve a shot.
Right.
It comes up with also the other thing that people were looking at, and I realized that the SEC was excellent this year. Auburn, number 1 overall seed, Alabama a 2 seed, Tennessee a 2 seed, Kentucky a 3, Texas A&M a 4, Ole Miss a 6 seed. There are 14 teams from the SEC in this tournament.
32 SEC teams. Yeah, we're watching the SEC tournament is what it feels like.
It does.
Does it? Yeah. So that's. I know you basically almost had to be rushed to urgent care last week, ranting about how the tournament shouldn't be expanded. But when something like 14 conference teams are in the tournament, I mean, again, I talk about devil's advocate. Doesn't that kind of open your mind a little bit to maybe expanding the tournament, or how do you feel?
Like I said, SEC is very good. Very good. Texas went 6-12 in the SEC this year. They're 19-15, and they're in a play-in game against Xavier, which I think Xavier is going to kill them, but that's neither here nor there. So if Texas, in theory, went on a run and won this whole thing, you would look at them 14th in the SEC standings and going, that's my national champion. Like looking at that team, I believe Oklahoma is a 9 seed. They play UConn in the first round. Vanderbilt's a 10 seed right above them. Georgia's a 9 seed right above them. Out of those teams, I think you probably could have put in a Boise State or an Indiana or a West Virginia over the 14th team in the SEC.
No doubt.
So again, you want to give the teams that deserve to be in there. 19 and 15 just doesn't scream national champion to me. Everybody gets their shot here and there, but you look at Boise State was, I got to get their record real quick. I'll pull it up, but they were 24 and 10. Again, they don't play as hard of opponents, but I think maybe they could have gotten in, and they went to the Mountain West Championship and lost to Colorado State that got in.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have given you 4 teams from the Mountain West and 13 teams from the SEC. I think you still would have been okay. Yes, you can look at it and make that argument that the tournament with 4 more teams would have all these teams in there, but then right after those 4 teams are going to come the other teams that go, well, we're next in line. Why didn't we get in? I'm also trying to decide. West Virginia's governor today, or I believe it was yesterday, asked for an official investigation of the NCAA, like in an actual political press conference.
I had seen that headline on social media. Might have been this morning, and I didn't know. I didn't click it. I didn't read into it. Is that actually happening?
I don't know if there's going to be an official investigation, but he was up there and he was ranting and raving about how it was an injustice to the great state of West Virginia, and everything else like that. And then they actually panned to the crowd that was there, and nobody was there, and I felt pretty bad for him.
Right.
All that being said, we kind of look at the KenPom stats, and I'm going to throw out a whole bunch of things at you, and you let me know kind of how you feel about all this. So since 2002, the only teams in the top 40 in offensive efficiency and top 22 in defensive efficiency have won the national championship, which means there's 4, 6, 8, 10 teams that fit that category. Florida.
Great metric. When did they start? When did they start coming out with the KenPom ratings?
I believe 2022 was the first year this gentleman put it out. Gotcha. And it was, again, if you go look at the website, I highly recommend everybody go look at the website. I hope he never changes it, because it looks like he made it on homestead.com.
Who remembers that? Wow.
It looks really janky. Or he might have gone back and done these. I'm not entirely sure. I know they have been big things for the past 2 years, maybe. There's other, like the Gordon Palm is offensive efficiency based upon how many possessions you basically have, whether you're a running team, a half-court offense team where you try to milk all the shot clock and everything else like that. And then it shows your efficiency based upon all that stuff. So again, this goes way deep into it, but they're great metrics to kind of look at. But the 10 teams that have a shot, all 4 number 1 seeds, Florida, Auburn, Duke, and Houston, are all in there.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee, Michigan State at 2 seeds, Iowa State at a 3 seed, Maryland at a 4 seed, Clemson at a 5 seed, and UCLA as a 7 seed. Now, I take UCLA and I go, no, you're not quite there. You fit the metric, but you don't necessarily fit. You're going to have a harder road. I would say any one of the other teams. I also count out Clemson. I've watched Clemson quite a bit. They're kind of inconsistent. And it's very funny that Brownell, I forget his first name, their head coach, is a guy that just never seems to be able to get fired, and he had a really good year this year and was considered for the Indiana job. I would say any one of the other 8 teams are legitimate contenders for the national title.
Who do you think out of the number 1 seeds, Duke, Houston, Auburn, and Florida, who do you think had the best year? I think Florida, when we're talking momentum, I think it's Florida's probably right there. Obviously Duke, when you talk star power. Who do you think had the most impressive regular season with enough momentum to carry it in the tournament out of the number 1 seeds?
I think Florida. I have Florida winning. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think they're the hottest team right now. Duke did win the ACC, a down year for the ACC. Did win the tournament without Cooper Flagg, which is impressive. Duke and Florida are 1-2 in the KenPom ratings. I mean, you could go either way with it. Auburn has Bruce Pearl, BC guy. Would love to see him coaching Boston College. Houston, Calvin Sampson's the head coach there. Gonzaga is an 8 seed in the Houston bracket region, which is the Midwest region. I don't think Houston's getting past Gonzaga. Gonzaga is a 9 number 9 overall in the KenPom ratings, and you put them at an 8. It just,
Sure.
they're
How many times have they been here?
Right.
How many times?
That's my big upset on the number 1 seed that goes down early. I think it's Houston. Again, I could be vastly wrong. The other thing with Iowa State that I'm going to count out is their best player is hurt, and they didn't release that information until after the picks came out, which was smart because, as we can see with West Virginia, they didn't even get in because their best player was hurt. Now is going to be all this kind of espionage type stuff in college basketball, but to go a little deeper into all this, there are some other metrics that help you whittle down this list a little bit more. No team has ever won a national championship after losing its first conference tournament game. No team has ever won a national championship with a first-year head coach.
Mm.
And I don't mean first year with the team, I mean first year as a head coach.
Right.
No top 2 seed that has ever started the season unranked has ever gotten to the Final Four, which, if you look at my Final Four, is Florida, Michigan State, Duke, and Tennessee. That would count out Michigan State. They were not ranked to start the year.
Understood. Okay.
And then every champion since 2004 was in the top 12 in the AP poll by week 6. So those measurables bring your list down to 6 teams, and one of them is Iowa State, which I've already said, without their best player, I don't think they have a shot. So it brings you down to 5.
Sure.
Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Duke. So if you're going to fill out a bracket, it's funny to me that they can go down this. Again, I don't have time to look at all these metrics. I only have time to look at them now. And this is the first year I've decided to go, oh, yeah, maybe there's something to this.
How much did you watch during the regular season? Actually watch the games? How closely were you following?
I watched quite a bit. I also tend to dabble in the hinged world of gambling, so I watched games because of that reason. Texas A&M I watched actually quite a few times and was not very impressed with them. I actually almost considered Yale to beat them in the first round. I know a lot of the metrics or a lot of the things that, like Michigan, though, very hot right now and won the Big Ten tournament. They're playing UC San Diego. Michigan turns the ball over quite a bit, and UC San Diego is the number 1 team in the country in forcing turnovers. So I have that as my upset.
This is where I'm going here. I'd love to talk upsets with you. There's a handful of teams that I have going deep. Actually, Michigan's one of them. Now you got me nervous. But Wisconsin, even though they're a 3 seed, love their season.
Yep.
I think they can roll. Michigan, which I already mentioned. Grand Canyon, the Antelopes. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to upset Maryland and get out of the first round. But do you have maybe 1, 2, 3 dark horse teams that you think can get deep?
I like UC San Diego to get to the Sweet 16 at least. They'll play Auburn, and that's when they're just going to run into a buzzsaw, and just unfortunately that's it. I think Xavier, coming out of the play-in game as an 11 seed, has the opportunity to beat Illinois in the first round, and then possibly Kentucky. I like Wisconsin. I do like Wisconsin. I think they pose a big threat to beating, Alabama in that Sweet 16 matchup. Wisconsin, this isn't a Frank Kaminsky team. This is a run and gun type team. There's no real big goofy white guy on that team like there had been in years past, or Sam Decker or anybody like that.
Yep.
Outside of the higher seeds, I think Colorado State's going to beat Memphis. I think Vanderbilt's going to beat St. Mary's. I think St. Mary's has gotten a little cool. And then I think Akron has a good chance. Akron has played very well this season. They play Arizona in the first round. I think they could make some noise as well as a 13 seed. I don't mind your pick of Grand Canyon. Maryland is known as the Crab 5. How has that not resonated with you?
Yeah, that's true. I'm looking up and down in that bracket. Drake, 30-3, 11 seed. I literally couldn't name a single player on the roster. How do you like their chances against Missouri?
So
I'm my bracket as we speak here.
I'm looking. I do have Drake beating Missouri. You got to remember, Drake has been under this head coach. I believe it's Ben McCollum is his name, for quite a few years, and they always seem to make some noise in the tournament and stuff like that. I will tell you, looking at the Gordon Palm, they are at the very bottom as far as pace. So they're not necessarily getting as many offensive possessions or offensive shots as some of the other teams. To give you an idea of who's on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Alabama is at the top. So they're a very slow you down, methodically get past you type team. They're going to wait for you to give them an opportunity to get a shot, whereas Alabama's going to run past you. They're going to try to get as many shots up as possible, and hopefully their shooting percentages are up there. So, two vastly different styles. I almost didn't pick Drake because of that reason in the way that basketball is kind of taught now. And you and I kind of talked about it, but, I mean, it's obviously a vastly different game now. It is. 3-point shots, get as many shots up as possible. Don't wait for the shot clock to go down. You know, Drake has figured out that doesn't work for them necessarily, and they're still playing basketball kind of the way that we grew up playing it, which was wait for your shot, take your time, pass the ball, everybody should touch the ball type stuff. Yeah, I just feel that I got them beating Missouri. I just don't think they get past Texas Tech.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that. You see a real star coming out of this tournament that might not be on, any draft boards right now that could, good leadership could make some noise and boost up in his stock a little bit?
I got to find their roster, but there's a guy for UC San Diego that has one of the greatest names I've ever heard of in my life.
I'm saying a lot too.
Aniwanawa Tate Jones, 6'6" forward. I didn't just have a stroke. That's the kid from UC San Diego. He's from New Zealand.
Okay.
Aniwaniwa Tate Jones. Yep, that's his name. So, 32-point high this year, 36 minutes. 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 blocks, 3 steals. Those are kind of his numbers as far as like his season highs. His lowest point total of the year was 7 points. His high, like I said, was 32. Kid can shoot. I've seen him shoot. I've seen the highlights of him. Again, not super familiar with the West Coast team just because I'm old and fall asleep fairly early. But, that's one of those, like, darling stars that may put up one of the 2 of those games that you're just like, yep, I remember him. The Doug Eggerts of the other couple of years ago. Stuff like, and then I mean, Cooper Flag is going to come back from injury, and I think he's going to absolutely destroy a lot of teams on the way to at least the Final Four. I have him in the finals.
Yeah, as do I. Let me ask you this: who do you think's coming out of the Texas game? Because Trey Johnson's one of the players that I actually followed most closely this year. The big 2-guard they got. Do you see Texas getting past Xavier tomorrow?
I don't. I think Texas is lucky to be where they are. I think that
19 and 13. Yeah, you had mentioned.
Yeah, I just think Xavier has his name Zach Freemantle, who's 17 points a game, 7 rebounds, big 6'9" forward. It's one of those kind of guys that almost feels like a big man of the past. He can play really down low, but he can shoot the ball really well, shooting over 52%. Trey Johnson, 19.8 points per game. So again, one of those guys that just can take over a game. I think you need a little bit more help.
Right.
One of the other guys that I do really like, and I've seen him play a couple of times, Donovan Dent, point guard for New Mexico. They're a 10 seed playing Marquette, and I think that New Mexico might win that game. But I almost consider him the best point guard in the country. 20 points a game, can run an offense, can get people, to go where he needs them to go. Great passing of the ball. He's one of the guys I've seen a few times. I also know, like, some other weary things to be aware of. BYU is always one of those teams that just keeps winning when you don't need them to. But their
Absolutely.
defense...
That was one of the teams I was going to mention before. In teams that I think could go on a scary run. They're definitely one of them.
I just think their defense is not very good. Just from what I've seen, like, their offensive output and their defensive output is almost neck and neck. And again, they play in a smaller conference comparative to some of the other teams. I just don't think bad defense is going to take you very far.
Sure. It's a different game than the NBA, where you don't have to play defense. So
right, yeah, exactly.
It's
the
a
NBA
different game. Right.
I had to do a little research for it, so I had actually applied to be a on-air personality for the Phoenix Suns, and I had to record a video and send it off to them, and not realizing that the Phoenix Suns were that far out of the playoffs with KD and Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, and they're like
Yep.
3 games out of the playoffs behind the Dallas Mavericks that don't have anybody playing for them right now.
Right.
I said they're deep. I looked up the different stats of why they could suck so bad, and it's their defense is atrocious.
You still need defense, especially if you don't have a lot of firepower. But in college, it's a heck of a lot more necessary than it is in the league these days. But you're right. Yeah. Phoenix. Oh, what's I hate to get off topic, but KD, where is he going?
I don't know. You can still get a haul for him, which is interesting to me. They could still trade him. They could still trade Bradley Beal, and they could still get something out of it. So I think they'll end up doing that. I think Devin Booker, you got to build around him, and then you just got to find, because after that, your next highest paid player was Grayson Allen, and he's averaging like 10 points a game. So you have 3 superstars that can't pass the ball to each other, and then you have 3 superstars that don't want to play defense. And then you made trades for, you know what, I'm getting way too off topic for the Phoenix Suns, but the one other
we
thing
could talk hoops all day. We could go from topic to topic. That was my bad, though.
The one thing that I do want to point out also about the tournament is in the West region, you have Kansas as a 7 seed. Now, I'm not super sold on Kansas this year. It's just an off year for them. Arkansas, they're playing in the first round, a 10 seed. And then right below them, St. John's is playing Omaha. That's Bill Self.
St. John's.
Yep. So that's Bill Self at Kansas, Coach Calipari at Arkansas, and Rick Pitino at St. John's. You have 3 national championship winning coaches right near each other. We can all assume that St. John's is going to get by Omaha. Arkansas has been very inconsistent. Coach Cal's first year there after leaving Kentucky. And then Bill Self, I mean, your second round matchup's either Bill Self, Calipari against Rick Pitino. That's a hell of a second round matchup.
Oh, unbelievable. That's my favorite bracket. You got to love these Hall of Famers that we kind of grew up watching. You know, it's ridiculous. Go from school to school to school, and they just bring success wherever they go. Calipari's, I'm not the biggest Cal fan, but it's pretty remarkable what he's done.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of coaches in here. Chris Beard at Ole Miss, Calipari, Rick Pitino. They're all kind of like coming back after off the court issues and kind of making a name for themselves. I believe Rick Pitino is the first coach to win a conference tournament with 5 different teams: BU, UMass, Kentucky, Iona, and now St. John's.
St. John's.
So I mean,
it's unparalleled career. I don't know, a little off topic here. Did you see the clip that's been kind of floating around social media where Pitino just ripped into the team at halftime during the conference tournament there? Did you see that?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. I don't know if I've watched it in its entirety, but I mean, he still has the drive to win. He still has all that stuff. And whatever you think of him as far as off the court and everything else like that. And again, I still hold a grudge somewhere deep in my being of him being the president and head coach of the Boston Celtics all the way back when. But
that's right.
I mean, he can coach basketball. And I think he was destined to be a college coach and, you know, mold those types of players, pros and stuff like that. Once you get to that level, I mean, you have your own kind of thinking. And for you to buy into a system, Rick Pitino, I just don't think was ever that guy. But man, he can coach basketball.
Oh, he can. He's going on 73. So not sure how long he can continue this run, but he's the GOAT for sure.
Yeah. So my Final Four, like I said, Florida against Michigan State, Duke against Tennessee. I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn beats Michigan State to get in there. I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama beats Duke to get into the Final Four. I wouldn't be surprised if Gonzaga still came out of the Midwest. Do you know what your Final Four is, or are you still holding on to that close to your chest?
Well, I'm filling my bracket now. As I mentioned before, I got to have Florida in there. That goes without saying. I'm thinking Auburn, Florida. I hate to put number 1 seeds, but they just had such good years. I'm probably going to have probably gonna, as I push this forward here. Oh boy, I'm probably gonna shock you on my last pick, and I'm gonna have Oregon going into the Final Four.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, Oregon, and then probably I have to. It's the number one seeds. You're gonna have to pull up some data for me and find out when the last time that 4 number one seeds made it to the Final Four. But how do you count out Houston? Gonzaga, which you had mentioned, is going to be tough. I know you like Clemson a lot. I like Tennessee, but I just see Houston getting there. I guess my one. So let's go Auburn, let's go Florida, let's go Houston, and let's go Oregon.
Not bad. Not bad. I don't think there was, outside of what Florida looks like right now and somewhat Duke, and I realized Duke was short-staffed, if you will, there was no real, jump out at you, clear-cut number one. So, I mean, again, when you're putting 14 teams in from the SEC, I mean, there's obviously not anybody that's, really stand out-ish or anything else. But the last time all 4 number one seeds ever made it to the Final Four was 2008. And that was North Carolina, UCLA, Memphis, and Kansas. And that was the year Kansas beat Memphis. So that was Derrick Rose? Is that right around Derrick Rose?
Yes, 2008 Memphis, Derrick Rose, yes.
Yeah, so that was, Derrick Rose was on that team.
That was Calipari as well, correct?
That was Calipari as well at Memphis. And who was the point guard for the Heat for a long time that went to Kansas? Chalmers.
Right? Mario Chalmers.
Mario Chalmers, yep. I believe that was his team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, again, that's how long ago.
Right? Seems like yesterday. It really does.
I love this time of year. I love everything about it. I hope they don't expand it. They've obviously given us every reason to with the selection this year, but I'll be watching first and second rounds, man. Those are my favorite ones. To see every team, these are my favorite games to watch. Once you get down to the 16, you kind of all right, the bigger teams are probably going to prevail, but the first round, anything can happen. I love it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm hoping we have a Cinderella run this year. I mean, we usually do, but you're right. The first 2-3 days, a nonstop action. Like I said, I'm more of an NBA guy, but this time of year, I have to turn off the NBA and watch March Madness. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep my bracket close to me for day one. I know I'll have it ripped in half by the end of day one.
Yeah.
But, I'm hoping that I at least can get one right. I want to know what the it's nil. It's basically nil is what it says. It's approximately 1 in 9.2 quintillion.
Wow.
It would be the year that I don't bet a game that I would get a perfect bracket. That's how it would work.
Absolutely. So. I'm pretty sure, Follows Life, ESPN, are they doing the whole Yahoo $1 million bracket challenge? Is that still going on? I haven't done it for years.
Going on. I mean, you want to take everybody's money and you have a 1 in 9.2 quadrillion chance? I would do that.
You said you're a gambler, so.
I am. I don't think those odds really are in my favor.
Most gamblers would think otherwise, so maybe you're not a true gambler.
Yeah, maybe. Listen, I still got a roof over my head, so we shall see. But I want to thank you very much for your time tonight. Again, Inspirational Hoops, Dan O'Keefe, keep it up. Keep doing at least one. If I can sneak away to Fort Lauderdale, I'll come, put the ball between my legs once and retire.
I hope you can come, brother. I hope you can come. And it's been a blast talking to you. Loftsidebantr's awesome, man. What you've done in a short amount of time, consistency's crazy, content's amazing. Like I said, you got the mind for it, so I'm going to be listening anyways. And anytime you want me to hop on, I'll come have a blast with you. I
appreciate it. And for everybody that's listening out there, like I said, Inspirational Hoops for Mr. O'Keefe over here. And then for myself, Loftsidebantr, have fun watching the NCAA tournament. And I hope everybody has the perfect bracket. I hope everybody wins. I don't. I hope I win. But all right, everybody, have a good night.
Go Antelopes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night, and we will see you next time.